100% from camp. Of course, he trained in the Bay Area for this fight. He's from New York, but he worked in the Bay Area with Virgil Hunter, who trains Andre Ward, one of the pound-for-pound best fighters. He had a great, great camp. In the best shape I've ever seen him. So he's taking this fight very, very seriously. He knows the challenge in front of him. You talked about him overcoming cancer. I think coming through something like that, going through something like that, and coming out the way he has, coming back, all of his fights since coming back, he's won by knockout. I think he feels relaxed and he feels like, hey man, if I can get through that, I can get through Triple G. However, Gennady Golovkin, that's a monster right there.
Now, you know, the common school of thought, and this is what most people say who follow boxing, well, the way to beat Triple G is to side jab, stay away from him, turn him, and try to slap him around and box him for 12 rounds. But I think that underestimates. He has a great jab. He's an underrated boxer. He's great at cutting the ring off. So is that the best strategy? Or maybe some of them, they're like Canelo or somebody who could really pop and hit him and get his attention and maybe hurt him with something. Is that the best way to go?
Well, he hasn't been beat yet, so we don't know what the best way to go is, right? He had over 350 amateur fights, and you don't have that many amateur fights without learning something about boxing. The thing about Gennady Golovkin, there's really no special effects. He doesn't do anything flashy. He doesn't do 20 punch combinations on the mitts when he's working out with his trainer, Abel Sanchez. Everything is very textbook, but they perfect it. They work on the same combination in the gym over and over. He works on his footwork, he shadow boxes, does everything so detailed, so detail oriented. When he gets in the ring, he's just a seek and destroy fighter. And I think there's a stereotype with that style. A lot of people think, oh, well, this guy isn't really light on his feet, he's not really a boxer. But he, as you said, he cuts off the ring very well. He's probably the best in all of boxing. And guys that have tried to slide out on against the ropes.
Willie Monroe.
Exactly. Yeah. He will reach with a right hook to the body. If you're moving to his right, if you're going to his left, he'll slap you with the left hand. And I've seen him, I think he was fighting Martin Murray, a very good fighter who was the same size as Daniel Jacobs, because he's the taller guy against Golovkin. He clipped Martin Murray sliding out on the ropes right under the ribs with a right hook to the body that dropped him and changed that fight. So Gennady can catch people trying to move on him, and I think that's what he's going to do Saturday night with Jacobs.
Now, you look at Gennady Golovkin, probably the best, I'd say the best in the world pound for pound, especially now that Floyd Mayweather is retired. But now Floyd says he's coming back, but he says he's only coming back to fight Conor McGregor. So I know this would create a lot of interest and it'd be huge pay-per-view and get a lot of UFC fans over to boxing. But how do they make this happen? Because Dana White has McGregor under contract for 4 more fights and says he's not going to let him out. And I'm sure Dana's using this as a ploy. He wants to co-promote this and get a piece of the action. So without cutting Dana in for some of the profits here, he's got him under contract. How do they make this happen?
There's several issues, because you talk about Dana White. As far as I know, he's not a licensed boxing promoter. So that's an issue right there. And then you mentioned the contract he has with UFC. You know, Conor McGregor just got his boxing license. So I don't know how you put all this together. There's so much legalese. These deals are so complicated to make. I think it's all a ploy just to try to get Manny Pacquiao to talk about a rematch with him, because Pacquiao's had a couple of fights that were supposed to happen this spring that didn't come together, fell through one way or another, and now he's open in maybe June, July, and that's when Floyd wants to fight. So either way, we had the money grab of the century in May 2015 with Mayweather Pacquiao. We're going to get the money grab of the century part 2, whether it's Pacquiao again or McGregor.
And, you know, I said before Mayweather Pacquiao on the air here, Michael, you don't need to buy this fight. I'll tell you exactly how it's going to happen. You don't need to buy this pay-per-view. Floyd's he's going to spin, he's going to hold, he's going to dodge, he's going to keep the jab in his face, he's going to outbox him, he's going to slap him around for 12 rounds and win an easy decision, which is what happened. Now, with Conor McGregor with no boxing experience, doesn't Floyd slap him around for 12 rounds and win an easy decision, or maybe does he stop him late if he decides to open up on him?
I guess it depends how much trash Conor McGregor talks. If there is a Floyd Mayweather of the UFC, it is Conor McGregor. Right?
That's going to be better than the fight, huh? The lead-up?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is going to be the circus, you know, the circus coming to town. They'll probably do a huge press tour all over. They'll probably go over to the UK as well. That will be a lot of fun. But for McGregor, he doesn't even have amateur boxing experience. You know, you see some of these MMA fighters actually box a little amateurs, and they can, you know, they're pretty good with what they call stand-up. But the stance and the footwork and transferring your weight from your back foot to your front foot, turning over on your punches, those little fundamentals that for boxers who start as kids, it's second nature. It's just a reflex. They don't think about it. We've seen some footage of Conor McGregor sparring and boxing, getting tuned up by journeymen, and you can tell he's thinking about everything he's doing. He's thinking about every move he makes. That split second in boxing, that gets you knocked out. Now Floyd doesn't knock people out, so I think this would probably go all 12 rounds. But if Conor tries to go for it and slaps him or does something dirty, Floyd might get him out of there if it happens.
Montero on boxing. You see him on YouTube. That's the Twitter handle. Of course, Boxing Monthly. He writes a column every month at UCN Live as well. You can see him there. And I'm part of that as well with Doug Fisher and Steve Kim and company with Dave Smith here at NBC Sports Radio and NBCSportsRadio.com. Okay, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Canelo Álvarez coming up. Now, I'll qualify this by saying I've heard this before, but Chavez Jr. right now says he's on weight for the first time in his career. This time he's serious. He's taking boxing seriously now and training hard for the first time. Didn't have to go to camp and lose 30 pounds. He's on weight. He's focused and ready to go, and he's bigger than Canelo is naturally. And I know Ray Mancini thinks Chavez Jr. can win this fight when I had him on. So any chance at all for Chavez Jr. against Canelo?
Absolutely. I think,
really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a better fight than people are expecting. When it was first signed, when it was first announced, I reacted like most people, like what the hell is this? You know, especially with the catch weight, 164.5 pounds. We can't forget that half. Canelo's been kind of fighting at his own weight. It was the junior Canelo weight at 155. Now it's super Canelo weight at 164.5. But I've seen pictures of Chavez. I've seen footage of him in camp working out. He
looks good.
He looks very, very good. I mean, he looks a little emaciated because he's cutting so much weight. But I think that one key factor here that a lot of people don't know, there's no rehydration clause. So both guys are probably going to come into the ring that night on May 6th, probably as cruiserweights. They probably won't even be light heavyweights. They'll be cruiserweights. And if you've seen the footage from the press tour, these guys face to face, Chavez is a lot bigger, a lot taller, broader shoulders, just a naturally bigger man. So if he can comfortably make that weight and rehydrate and be comfortable in the ring to go a full 12 rounds if he needs to, because I think this is going to be a war of attrition, this thing might get interesting, particularly in the later rounds.
Let's say Canelo gets past this, as most people think, and now he and Triple G, I know Oscar and Canelo have been avoiding this fight for a long, long time, but eventually they're going to have to take it here. So how does that match up? Canelo's strong guy, hits hard. Maybe he can tag Triple G and get his attention early. But how do you see that one coming out if they fight?
I think of all the fighters that Golovkin has faced so far, and of course he's got to get past Jacobs and Canelo's got to get past Chavez, but Canelo would present a unique package that he hasn't faced yet. Canelo's built compact. He's got a strong upper body. He has underrated hand speed, underrated head movement, and upper body movement. The thing with Canelo, he's a little heavy in the feet, and I think he's not going to be hard to find. I think that these two are going to come right at each other. Canelo naturally wants someone to come right to him, and he wants to counterpunch. That's exactly what Golovkin's going to do. So I think that it would be a good fight. It'd actually be one of these super fights that lives up to the hype. I think that Canelo's a strong guy who so far has shown a good chin, and he goes to the body. And we talked before about how do you beat Golovkin. Well, maybe if you go to the body, you take some of the starch out of his punches. I think that could be a very, very interesting fight.
Can he take the pounding? I mean, he's going to be right there in the pocket. He's going to be in the lion's mouth there against Triple G. He's not a guy who's going to move and box.
Yeah.
Can he take the punishment? What kind of a chin? And that doesn't seem to be a good recipe against Golovkin.
No, and I think we're going to, this Chavez fight, we're going to learn a lot from it. Can he take shots from a bigger guy? Golovkin's not a big middleweight. That's something that's a misconception that he's this big middleweight. He comfortably makes weight. He's a couple pounds under usually. He fought as light as light welterweight in the amateurs when he was a junior amateur. So he's not a very big guy himself. And in the ring that night, should these two fight, should Canelo and Golovkin fight, Canelo's going to be the heavier guy. Can he absorb the punches? We'll find out. But if he can take punches from Chavez, I think the wisdom here with Golden Boy Promotions, what they're thinking is, if he could take shots from a guy that big, punching down with leverage, he should be able to hang in there with Golovkin.
And the old saying is, as the heavyweight division goes, so goes boxing. And throughout history, the heavyweight division has fueled money and fueled everything in the sport of boxing. Not so much lately, but we got an exciting prospect in Anthony Joshua in England who's fighting Vladimir Klitschko coming up here. Deontay Wilder, the American with a piece of the belt here, just coming off a knockout win over Gerald Washington. We got Anthony Parker down in New Zealand who's fighting Huey Fury coming up, the brother of Tyson. all this comes together and they all fight each other. Who comes out on top, do you think? Who's the best heavyweight in the world?
You know, right now, the number one spot for me is vacant. We just don't know. You talk about Anthony Joshua, and he's one of these guys that has the look, right? Everything looks prototypical 21st century textbook heavyweight, right? Super heavyweight. Maybe he's Vladimir Klitschko version 2.0. We'll find out when he fights Klitschko in late April. Can he take a punch, though? Can he take a big shot from somebody that is as big and strong as him, as tall as him, that's punching right at him? He's 6'6", so a lot of the guys he's been fighting are smaller and punching up at him. How is he going to react when he fights Klitschko, who's a little taller maybe, who's going to be punching straight at him? Joseph Parker, I like him a lot, but he's kind of rough around the edges, and he needs to clean a lot of things up. The thing so far with Parker, though, he's shown a good chin. We've seen him get tagged, and he's responded well. So Deontay Wilder, that's another one. You know, he's looks great. He's very athletic, fast and fluid for such a big man, but he hasn't fought very good opposition. He probably has the weakest opposition of all those guys. And Parker and Joshua, they're still prospects. Wilder's got over 30 pro fights, but he hasn't fought anybody yet. So these guys have to fight each other. All I know is these are good questions to have, good problems to have. The heavyweight division's hot again. It's just global now. It's not just Americans, and American boxing fans are going to have to get used to the fact that the best fighters now, they're coming in all shapes and sizes and from all over the world.
And unfortunately, we used to have boxing teams all over the country back in the day in every city, and they'd have traveling teams, and we'd develop our young heavyweight fighters, and now our best athletes aren't going into boxing anymore, which is a big problem. They're in the NBA, they're in the NFL, and all the boxing teams and the clubs from the past are all gone now. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, the money's dried up. You know, the amateur boxing program used to be funded very, very well, and the funding just isn't there, and it's hard to get an American kid involved in boxing. You know, growing up, I loved boxing, but I kind of was brought into it by my family, and that's generally how most boxers, at least in America, are brought into the sport. It's through their families. It's through hunger. It's a way to fight yourself out of a bad situation. There's so many kids, though. You look at basketball, you can go play overseas. You could go play in Italy. You could play in Argentina. So if you don't make it to the NBA, you still have options. In boxing, you're not making big money till you get to that championship level. Now, at the top level, you can make tens of millions of dollars in one night. We've talked about Mayweather Pacquiao. That was $500 million of business in one night. But when you're starting out, you're making $500, $1,000 for a 4-rounder. That's hard to get a kid to dedicate himself to a sport where it's that hard. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. We are seeing more of these heavyweights transfer over from basketball, from football, guys who maybe blow out your knee or something like that. And in boxing, of course, you're on your feet, but it doesn't require, you're not going to run a 40-yard dash. So if you blow out your knee, you can do pretty well in boxing. The problem is these guys aren't used to getting punched on the chin, and they're not used to the endurance boxing requires.
Live and in studio, Michael Montero from Montero on Boxing, Boxing Monthly, UCN Live, UCNLive.com. Last question. You mentioned it. Triple G's not a big middleweight. He said over the years, I can get to 54 easy, especially if the money is right. And they talked about he and Floyd, and he'd probably have to. There'd be so much money to be made there. You bring him down to 54, maybe Floyd throws enough money out there, bring him down to 52, between 50. I don't know. Floyd have any chance at all against Triple G?
Of course he has a chance. I mean, if they drain Triple G, we talked about how he cuts off the ring. Your feet get heavy when you cut weight like that. It really, really takes a lot out of your body. And Golovkin hasn't weighed less than, I think, 157, 158 so far as a pro, at least not in many years. So, and he's also getting up there in age. He's in his mid-30s now, approaching his late 30s. So he's not that much younger than Floyd. And Floyd is maybe better preserved because he doesn't fight very often. There were several years there where he's fighting once a year or so, and his style lasts longer. I would favor Golovkin, don't get me wrong. I don't think Floyd would ever utter Triple G's name. Floyd Mayweather is the best matchmaker in modern boxing history, and he only signs the dotted line if he knows he's going to win. More businessman than boxer. All right, Michael, tell us real quick before we let you go here how we can find you on Twitter and on YouTube and in the magazines you write for. Please find me my YouTube channel, Montero on Boxing, and it's the same handle for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. You can find my articles in Boxing Monthly magazine. I do some work with Undisputed Champion Network with Dave. Just find me out there on social media for the best in boxing news and analysis. Please subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff.
Well, thanks for coming in live. This is awesome. Good
Thanks for
stuff.
having me
Appreciate
live.
it. There we
Thank
go.
you.
The great Michael Montero with Dave Smith here at NBC Sports Radio.